Welcome to episode 2 of the video camera course, and I know you're all excited about the camera that you just got your hands on, but hold your horses, because we got to talk about these things. Lenses. See, I know it's a lot less exciting than deciding between your different camera bodies and all the fancy features and specs that they come with and the cool designs and stuff like that. The lenses are a lot more boring, but they are arguably way more important. You see, this guy has a lot more to do with the way that your image looks than your camera does. You see, all the camera bodies are basically at a pretty level playing field in today's standards. They're all doing great high quality 4K video, and they're all going to have kind of unique color profiles to some extent. But the lens is going to dictate much more the sharpness, the quality, the detail of the image, as well as obviously the focal length, how the framing works, how everything looks. So the lens is super, super important. You're not going to do any shooting without one, obviously. Now, the camera that you picked out might come with a lens. And if you already purchased that kit and everything, that's great. That's fine. If you didn't do that yet, I would recommend avoiding the camera kit that comes with a lens and just get the body by itself, and then go ahead and invest in a different lens that we'll go over in this video. I'm going to give you guys some recommendations for brands. Depending on what kind of shooting you're going to be doing, you're going to know like, okay, exactly what lens should I pick up for that style of shoot. So there are 3 things that you need to remember about lenses that are going to basically be the foundation of understanding how to pick the right one. You need to know what millimeter or focal length do you want your lens to be and for what reason. The second thing you got to pay attention to is the f-stop number of that lens. So a nice low number, f1, f2, f1.8, f2.8, those low numbers are what give you that super blurry background, as well as better capabilities to shoot in low light. So if your camera is supposed to be really good in low light and you're not getting the performance that you think you should be getting out of it, it could be because your lens is only at like f5.6 or something like that and doesn't quite get low enough, or open enough technically is what's actually happening. The blades in the aperture are opening super wide open as you lower that number down closer to 1 or 0. And then the third thing to dictate is, do I need a zoom lens or a prime lens? Now, zoom lens, very self-explanatory. You twist the ring and it zooms in, and then you have the focus ring above that. Now, prime lens, much different. You're not going to have no type of zoom at all. It doesn't change sizes or morph itself. It's just a fixed lens at one focal length, something like 35, 40, 50 millimeters. Now, you might just be thinking, okay, clearly a zoom lens is just superior because you get more versatility out of it, but the prime lenses actually have some benefits to them as well. You see, when comparing apples to apples, the prime lenses are usually much sharper, and also you're able to get that nice low f number, f1, f2, at a much lower price compared to the zoom lens equivalent. So for cinema work, for commercial work and stuff like that, you usually see them using prime lenses because of the ultimate level of sharpness that they're going to provide. However, if you're more run and gun, if you're doing weddings, if you're more of a street style videographer, or you're doing vlogs or some kind of thing like that, a zoom lens might be something that you want to get your hands on. Now, the next thing I want to bring to your attention is the sensor size of your camera that we went over in the last video plays a huge role into what lens you should get for that camera. So you've got your full frame size sensors, you have your APS-C sensors, and you have your MFT sensors, the smallest one. Those are the main 3 sensors you're going to see on any kind of professional video or hybrid mirrorless camera in today's world. Now, full frame is the standard. The numbers on your lens that have the mm next to them, the millimeters, those numbers are meant to reflect a full frame focal length. And so what that means is when you put that lens on a full frame camera, the number you see on the lens is the number you get in the camera. If it's a 24 millimeter lens and you put that on a full frame camera, you're going to be seeing a 24 millimeter focal length on the screen. I know, right? Very, groundbreaking information. However, what's not so obvious is that if you go down in size on your sensor to, let's say, an APS-C sensor, if I take that same 24 millimeter lens and now I put that on my APS-C camera, it's not quite going to look the same as it did on the full frame camera. It's going to look like it zoomed in a lot more. And that's because as you decrease the size of your sensor, you actually crop in more on the image. And it's not a crop like a digital crop that you would do in post, for example, where you would take the picture or the video first and then you go into your editor and you zoom in and you lose a bunch of that detail, right? That's not what's happening here. You're retaining the full amount of detail. I guess you could say it's not a digital crop, it's more of an optical crop, just like digital and optical stabilization. Digital is a software thing. Optical stabilization is an actual mechanism built into the camera to stabilize it. So it's a much different process going on. Sort of the same thing applies with this instance I'm talking here. The crop factor of the sensor size decreasing is not making you lose a ton of resolution or anything like that. 4K on an MFT sensor is still 4K. Just in case you were confused by that at all, there you go. So full frame is your standard. When you go down to APS-C, you actually have a 1.5 or 4x crop or so. And then when you go to an MFT, you're at about a 1.9 or 2x crop. So what that means is, let's say, okay, the 50 millimeter look on a full frame lens, that's a very traditional focal length that's used in a lot of films, a lot of everything. It's a nice medium focal length, kind of gives you the jack of all trades approach. If I want that look on a full frame camera, I buy a 50mm lens. Boom, done. But if I want that same exact look and sort of field of view on my MFT camera, I divide by 2 because there's a 2x crop. So because there's a 2x crop, or you're actually zooming in the image 2 times when you go from full frame to MFT, you want to do the opposite with your lens. You want to decrease the size by 2. So I want to divide 50 by 2 to get 25. So I'm going to get a 25mm lens to get that 50mm look on the MFT. So all you have to do is just figure out, okay, what sensor does my camera have? Is it MFT? Is it APS-C? Or is it full frame? If you got full frame, you don't got to do no math. Give yourself a big pat on the back. Good for you. If you have an APS-C camera, there's going to be a 1.5x factor. So what you do is you take the lens that you want for full frame. You say, okay, I want that 85mm full frame look for this shot. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take 85, divide it by 1.5 to get whatever that's going to be. It's going to be something around 70, something like that, 65, 70. You would get that lens to get that same look. And MFT is nice and easy because you kind of just divide by 2, nice simple number. You just chop it in half. So if I want 24mm look on MFT, I'm going to get a 12mm lens to reflect that. So is it a really big deal what kind of sensor you have? At the end of the day, no. If you have a modern video camera, they're all amazing. They do great in low light. They shoot really super high resolution. They have great dynamic range. Any of the cameras that we listed on our previous video, those are going to be great entry points to get yourself into if you want to sort of do anything professional, especially the last 3 on the list. However, no matter what kind of video camera you have, even if it's years old, it likely performs really well. And if it has a full frame sensor, that means it's probably a more professional oriented, serious piece of equipment. And that's not to say APS-C and MFT sensors can't be. It's just that the full frame is usually like the pro or the top level product that a manufacturer will make. Now, my camera is actually a bit of an outlier. I have an MFT sensor on my camera, but it's a Pocket 4K from Blackmagic, and the sensor was kind of really finely tuned to punch well above its weight. So even though I have the smallest of the 3 sensors, my camera actually outperforms a lot of APS-C and even older full-frame cameras in low light. And that's something that's usually a huge benefit of the larger sensors. So why is that? It's just because of good engineering, good software, good coding, and a great team. So again, there are some exceptions to the rule, and like I said, all the sensor sizes are adequate. You can do professional work with any of the 3. Just make sure that the camera itself actually has high-end video recording features and stuff like that. You're not getting some old MFT compact point and shoot camera, because that's not going to do the job. So get whatever camera you want. Don't be super caught up on what sensor it has and stuff like that. Just be mindful of the difference in the crop factor of the 3 sensors, and it's going to dictate, you know, what kind of lenses you buy for your camera. So anyway, moving forward, you still might be sitting there wondering, okay, what lens exactly should I buy? So we went over the whole sensor size thing. That's great. So I'm going to be giving you the numbers moving forward for a full frame number, just because that's the universal standard. And if you have an MFT camera, you're going to have to do the math on your own. I'm not going to do it for you and list out the different variations of all 3 different sensor sizes. So when I say, okay, 50mm is a medium focal length and it's for this, and that, I'm referring to how it looks on the full frame side of things. If you're an MFT shooter, you have to say to yourself, okay, he's talking about 50mm. For me, that's a 25mm. So anyway, yeah. Here we go. So if you're creating content, you just want to make content for yourself, for your personal brand, or maybe for your startup business, anything like that, I recommend getting one nice high quality zoom lens and then one less expensive prime lens that has a maybe smaller aperture number like an f1.8. My Blackmagic Pocket 4K, I do professional work with it. I shoot for businesses and clients and stuff like that. I also do all of my personal content for my business and for my personal brand. Everything is shot on this camera body. And there's really only 2 lenses that I find myself using for it. That's the Lumix 12-35, the jack of all trades zoom lens that sort of covers all my bases in 9 out of 10 situations. Great lens to have. It was pricey. It's around $700, but it was well worth it because I'll use it for years and years and years. There's really never a reason to replace it with anything of a higher quality. And as I upgrade to a different MFT camera, which I likely won't, but if I were to, this lens would carry over with that. It also has built-in optical stabilization, so not only will your camera bodies in a lot of cases come with stabilization features, but the lenses themselves will have the option to have them either stabilized or not. Again, obviously that's going to factor into the price, and one of the reasons why this guy is so expensive is because of that stabilization. But it's always well worth it to just invest in a really nice high-quality zoom lens, something on a full-frame side of things that would be more like 24-70. is really going to give you a good focal range. And that will probably be the lens that you find yourself using sort of like 7, 8, 9 out of 10 times. And then the other lens that I use all the time is my 25mm f2, and that's for my MFT camera once again. So on the full frame side of things, that's a 50mm. I love using that 50mm look. It's just the perfect medium format. You can get close and have things look more portrait. You can back up a bit and have things look a bit wider, but still have that nice compression and the nice symmetry of the face without the warping of like a wide lens. And you guys can see what I'm talking about right now on your camera or even on your phone. If you go to the widest lens on your phone, your face is going to look really narrow and kind of like warped and distorted and like stretched back. But as you go to a higher millimeter, like an 80mm, 100mm, or on your phone, if you zoom in to 3x or 5x, and then you look at someone's face, their face is going to look much more flat and how it should and much more symmetrical. The face changes a lot based on how zoomed in your lens is. 50mm really is the perfect number for sort of any situation. If you want to have a nice small pancake style lens on your camera that's going to keep things nice and compact, you can do some run and gun shooting and sort of be covered for most situations. 50mm is going to be great. And then also this lens goes all the way down to f2, which makes it my low light lens that I use in the dark. It's also the lens I'm using to get this shot right now. I like to use it for my talking head shots. Most YouTubers and stuff like that like to use a 35mm look. I sort of like that 50mm look because it keeps things a bit tighter from the shoulders up only and just compresses things a bit more, makes the shot more intimate and stuff like that. So there's going to be reasons why you're going to want to use a certain focal range, obviously. But having a nice, really high quality zoom lens that's going to last you a long time, and then just getting a manual prime lens that's around 50mm. And actually, most camera manufacturers, they know how popular of a focal range this is. And what they do is they make these nifty 50 lenses. Yeah, they call them that. At least on the Canon side of things, you'll hear everybody call it the nifty 50. And the reason it's called that is because the 50mm is just super versatile, super useful. And this one here goes all the way to f1.8, as you can see. So that's going to give you a lot of background blur and really good low light performance. And you can see here, compared to this Lumix lens that zooms in and only goes to f2.8, this prime here is much less expensive at $199. So if you have a Canon RF camera, I would basically just drop what you're doing right now and go buy this lens. Every single one of you that has a Canon, you should have a nifty 50. It just is going to be useful for any type of situation, for any type of shooter. It's going to give you a really cinematic, blurry background. And if you're trying to do any talking head for YouTube, for content, anything like that, it's going to give you a really clean and professional look. And also it's nice and flat and small, compact, keeps your whole rig nice and small. Now, if you have a Sony or a Lumix, whatever, there's going to be an equivalent to this nifty 50 for those brands as well. Canon is just kind of coined for developing the phrase nifty 50. I'm not sure if it came from Canon themselves or from the fans, but either way, Canon is known for these nifty 50 lenses, but all of the manufacturers have an equivalent. And sort of the nifty 50 for MFT shooters is going to be this guy here, the TT Artisan 25mm. Especially if you got a pocket 4K like me with no autofocus, this is a fully manual lens. So you cannot autofocus with this lens. You cannot change the aperture through the screen of your camera with this lens. You have to do it with this ring here. So everything is completely manual. There's no electronic functions built into this lens at all. I like it that way. I love manual lenses. Most cinema lenses are all manual, so that's just the way they work. It's just a much more tactile experience, and also the cost is even lower than the Canon Nifty 50, as you can see if I can find it here. There we go. $199 compared to $64. So you can see by keeping the lens all manual, this one incorporates autofocus. It has things like that built in. This one has none of that. It's just a full manual piece of metal with some glass inside. And the cost is nice and low. And again, 25mm for that pocket 4K, for that MFT sensor. That's going to give you your nifty 50 sort of look. So I think everybody should have that 50mm equivalent style lens on a prime. I think that's just a great option for anyone to get their hands on. It's going to cover you in a lot of different situations, and it gives you a lens that can really be like your low light beast lens. Now, if you're going to be doing anything professional, I would go ahead and invest in a really high quality zoom like I was talking about before. That's going to cover all your bases between this guy and the 50mm prime, and your work is going to look really, really, really good. Now, if you don't want to invest the 800 or whatever in a really high quality zoom, I totally understand. What you can do is compensate and get maybe like 2 or 3 different prime lenses that are going to cover the main focal lengths of that zoom lens that you would have used. So if this is the route you want to take, you've already got yourself a 50mm 1.8. The next thing I would get is a 35mm. That's again a really popular focal length. 35 is sort of coined as the most realistic looking. So that's kind of what your eyes are seeing, is sort of a similar field of view to what a 35 millimeter would give you. It's going to be great for street photography. It's going to be great for doing little product shoots and stuff like that. It's going to be great for a multitude of situations, but it's not going to be able to get super tight and zoomed in. This would be considered like a wide/medium field of view, but the 35 and the 50 are going to cover so many different situations, and those are going to be kind of like your two best friends, to be honest. And then I would recommend picking up a third lens. Now, I would decide, are you going to be doing more portrait style stuff where you want to get zoomed in to maybe different products or food items or stuff like that for restaurants? Or again, are you going to be doing lots of like vlogging style content or YouTuber style content where you might want something that gets a lot wider, something like a 16 or an 18 millimeter prime? And again, the beauty of going with primes is that all three of those lenses can have a super low f number, so they can all be really blurry backgrounds. They can all perform great in low light. And for any of you guys with any kind of camera out there that's maybe on a bit of a tighter budget and you want to keep things as affordable as possible, I really recommend looking at this company here, TT Artisan. They put out some really high quality lenses. And as you can see, their prices are a lot lower than you would see from Canon, from Sony, from even companies like Sigma that make really popular third-party lenses for those manufacturers. TT Artisan is a great brand that I really have been very happy with ever since I started using their products. And there's no sponsorship in this. They have no affiliation to what I'm saying right now. This is just my own genuine opinion. I really love the quality of their lenses. They are super robust feeling. They feel dense and like they're made of just like heavy, thick metal that just feels good to hold on to. Doesn't weigh your camera down too much, but it just feels substantial, feels expensive. And the one I showed you guys before, the 25 millimeter prime, that's sort of like their nifty 50 for MFT cameras. This lens is $64 and it feels like it's $400. And as you can see, there's so many different options. They have a 17 millimeter f1.4 for $139. So the prices are just really good for what you get. This one here actually has autofocus. It's a 27 millimeter f2.8 for $150. So you can see they have some great options at great prices. Most of their stuff is manual, so you're gonna have to maybe make that adjustment if that's something you're not used to. But I really recommend getting used to it anyway. It's gonna hone your skills with pulling focus and just having a more tactile, hands-on experience with your camera, getting to know it a little bit better, feeling out how it works a little bit better. Their lenses are not only super accessible and affordable to basically any lens mount, whether you have a Fuji X mount, an APS-C mount for a Canon or a Sony, whether you have an MFT mount for a Blackmagic or a Lumix, they have options for almost every single manufacturer, and the product is just super high quality for the money you pay. So I really recommend taking a look at these TT Artisans if you're trying to save some money. But if you don't care, if you want all the electronic bells and whistles, the autofocus, the stabilization, all that, you're probably going to have to get some proprietary stuff from that manufacturer. So I think that kind of covers most of the bases. We talked about the different sensors. We talked about zoom versus prime lenses. We talked about the two lenses that I use the most for my camera and what focal length they are and why. We talked about how to get that blurry background and good low light performance with your aperture. And we talked about different price points and features like optical stabilization built in, autofocus built in. Really the thing that you guys need to remember is that a lot of these lens companies are going to be great. You know, TT Artisan, Sony, Sigma, Tamron. These are all great companies that are going to put out good products. It's really just a matter of what's your budget, what's your use case, and are you going to be able to, with your current kit and sort of arsenal of lenses, do you have something that covers the wide, the medium, and the tight shot? Because those are the three shots that you kind of need to cover in most situations. For any kind of project, whether it's a commercial, whether it's an interview, whether it's a product shoot, or even a YouTube video, kind of the three foundational bases that you want to cover are, okay, let me just get a wide shot, a medium shot, and a tight shot of each different scene, of each different situation, of each different product, and then I can go through and pick, you know, which ones I want for which one. But that gives you the variety you need to sort of have any type of shot you need to work with, or any type of angle that client might prefer. You're going to have captured it. And we'll get into a lot of that later in the course when we actually start shooting. But this is where those foundations are built, is when you select your different lenses and you sort of kit yourself out with your arsenal. You have a nice camera now, and you're going to get yourself some nice lenses for it. Be sure that you don't stick yourself in a box of being able to only capture wide shots or only being able to capture portrait or tight shots. Whether you get one zoom lens, whether you get two lenses, a zoom and a prime, whether you get 3 or 4 different prime lenses, just make sure that you can cover those three bases: wide, medium, and tight.